So we're recording. So welcome everyone. And we're excited to see so many students here. My name is Randy. I am, if you don't know me, because I don't know every student in here, I'm the assistant director of the EOF program. I'm also joined by other colleagues I see in here from across EOF and TRIO, Miss Carrie, Dr. C is in here, Miss Caroline. We got Brandon in here. So we have quite a few representatives. So we'll be monitoring the chat as our presenter goes through the information. So if you do have things that pop up while he's presenting, and you feel free to throw it in the chat, and we'll make sure that those questions get answered. We'll definitely leave a lot of space and time towards the ends of the presentation for any questions that you may want to ask or anything that you want him to expand upon. But I really encourage you, if this is something you're interested in for entrepreneurship or something you've thought about, maybe some of you have already kind of started that process. And I encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. This is a great space. There are no dumb questions. I always say that to people. There are no dumb questions. So any question you have, please throw it in the chat or feel free to ask at the end. I'm also going to throw in the chat the part 1 of this workshop series. So some of you may have been a part of that, and that was back in the fall semester. We did record that workshop. I have it loaded on YouTube, so I will send you the YouTube link. So if you missed that workshop and you want to hear that conversation, you'll have access to that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. I'm going to allow him to also introduce himself and a little bit about his background. But our presenter today is Mike Newman. Mike is probably not unfamiliar to a lot of you because I feel like he's been doing a lot for us in the past year or so. He's done a number of our financial literacy workshop series, and you'll be seeing him more this semester with some of the topics that we have planned between EOF and TRIO. So we're very honored and excited that he keeps willing to partner with us and provide information to our students. That's been very helpful. So I'm going to let you take it away, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you to everyone who takes the time to put these together. I do enjoy doing them, so I'm happy to be back again for the new year, 2021. Hopefully, this will be a better year than last year. With that said, the goal of today is to talk about entrepreneurship. So I myself grew up around entrepreneurship. As a financial advisor now, I am, quote unquote, an entrepreneur. I had to build everything up myself. And so I'm looking forward to going through part 2 of entrepreneurship today. As Randy already mentioned, feel free to put questions in the chat. If it's a question related to the topic we're specifically talking about, I'm more than happy to take a few minutes to answer that question. My hope is that I'll go through the pre-prepared materials in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then really leave it up to questions from everybody that is here. So again, my name is Mike Newman. I do work at Ameriprise Financial. I have my CPA, CFP, and today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, part 2. So I will share my screen here so that everybody can see what I'm looking at. And we'll get started. So first and foremost, this is the overview of what we'll go through today. We'll recap entrepreneurship part 1 briefly. We'll talk about developing habits to succeed as an entrepreneur. So now that you've either started your business or are on the fringes of starting your business, what is it that it actually takes to succeed? We'll identify what the key growth activities are in order to build and grow your business. I will talk about back office setup, probably the least favorite thing to do for an entrepreneur. We'll talk about and go through business examples, either that are related personally to me or that are clients of mine. And then I'll talk about common business mistakes. And I wanted to end with that because I think there are a number of mistakes, or I'll call them a lack of knowledge that people have when they start a business. And since I've made some of them myself, I'm hoping that I can share those with you. So to get started, we'll recap entrepreneurship part 1. So what is entrepreneurship? All right, it's an activity of taking on the financial risk of essentially setting up a business in the hope of generating an income to sustain your lifestyle. So rather than being paid by another company, you're essentially setting up your own company so that you can pay yourself. I put down here this little line in quotes only because I either got it from a book or from some comments I was reading, and I think it does a good job of describing entrepreneurship. So more or less, it said entrepreneurship is great because you get to work half days. Those half days are any 12 hours in a day, 7 days a week. That can be your work schedule. So entrepreneurship, and we talked about this last time, is a wonderful thing, but it does take a lot of effort, a lot of work, and you will work longer hours than you did if you were working for somebody. And that is because you are handling all tasks at this point. You're the HR person, you're the janitor, you are the financial person, the accountant. So I think that does a good job of describing entrepreneurship in a nutshell. To continue on with the recap here, we talked about what entrepreneurship entailed, basically the difficulties in getting started, the amount of effort that it takes to truly build a business, the things that you need to do just to get going. Whether it's developing a business plan, determining what type of business structure you want, is it an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, etc., and also determining the reasons that you want to start a business. Because if your reason or your why is not strong enough, ultimately most businesses will either fail or slowly go away. And we talked about how to start a business, and that was going through, as I've already mentioned, setting it up, whether it's getting a EIN, which is an entity identification number from the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, or getting a state ID tax number. Unfortunately, there is no escaping taxes, and part of setting up a business is registering your business as an actual entity. So if we move on here, I want to start with habits of success. So the first three words that you see here, discipline, consistency, and patience, are the three most important things when it comes to actually diving into the weeds once you have set up your business. So if you start a business, you need to be disciplined. And if you're disciplined, you need to have consistency. And if you have those two things, then really it's just a matter of time. And as I mentioned, I will give some examples of businesses that are starting to either flourish now or have flourished because of their discipline, consistency, and most importantly, patience. So we're going to start with the first piece, which is, I will say, creating discipline and consistency by establishing a model week. So what is a model week? A model week is essentially a roadmap to your success for each week. It describes what is it that I'm going to do for each hour of the day. Now, I do have my own model week that I have created since I started at Ameriprise and as a financial advisor, and it has been extremely helpful to me. So what most people don't realize is a lot of times they have a model week set up for them. If you're at college, your model week is when you go to class. The remaining part of it is up to you, when you decide you want to go out and have fun or when you want to sit down and study. But creating a model week for a business really does help to keep you on track. So I gave an example here. You can see you have breakfast at 7 a.m., emails from 8 until 9. Then from there, you start to do other things, whether it's prepping for a meeting, holding client meetings. But what you'll see mostly here is in the purple is marketing. Marketing, when you're initially starting a business, is probably the most important thing that you can do because that is what is ultimately going to grow your business. So one thing you don't see on here is that although your day may be starting at 6 or 7 a.m., it typically goes until about 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And that is because there is just a lot to do when you start a business. And most marketing can be done in the afternoons and in the evenings, depending on the business that you're in, because usually that's when you're going to have the most access to reach out to people. All right. So first and foremost, to create some type of consistency and some type of discipline, it helps to have a model week. The next part, so now that we have a model week, or even before we have a model week, we need to identify the goals. All right, so when we talked the last time, we talked about identifying business goals. Why are we creating our business and what is our goal for our business? And now we need to start to drill down into that. If you have, or if you're going through classes in college, a lot of times they teach you about SMART goals. SMART goals are simple. They're just specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. You put those in place to hold yourself accountable. Okay, so they could be yearly goals, monthly goals, weekly goals, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. An example of a SMART goal is very simple: write a business plan within 30 days. So one, I would tell you that before you start your business, you should probably have a business plan in place. But if you see here, if you're writing a business plan, it's specific, it's measurable from the standpoint of it needs to be done within 30 days. Uh, I would say that writing a business plan in 30 days is attainable. And then on top of that, it's relevant because you're creating a business, and it's time bound because it needs to be done within 30 days. Same thing goes for the other three examples you'll see there: developing a marketing plan within 15 days of writing the business plan, bring on one new client per month in 2021, generate $15,000 in income. So those are examples of goals, but there's all types of goals. And one of the things that I will say is most important is that once you establish your overarching goal, so for instance, we're going to use this as an example, generating $50,000 in income in first year for your business, you then want to work backwards. Okay. So you'll see here, you want to create goals each year for your business. You probably want to dedicate about a week to work on those goals because you want to take your time to make sure that they are established. And once you identify them, you want to work backwards. So as I mentioned, if our first goal is generate $50,000 in income, how do we actually work backwards from that goal? So the first thing we do is we say, okay, well, if we bring on a new client, let's just say that this is a service industry. We bring on a new client, and that one new client generates $2,000 in income. Okay. We now know for an entire year that we need 25 clients. All right. So then what does it take to actually generate 25 clients? Well, let's say that in order to generate 25 clients, or let's say that in order to bring on one new client, we need to get in front of 500 people, okay? Whether that's via YouTube, Instagram, going to a workshop, going to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, a business association meeting. We need to somehow get in front of 500 people in order to bring on one client. So if we get in front of 500 people, that means we probably will get about 5 meetings. If we get 5 meetings, hopefully we bring on one client. So what does it take to do that? Well, let's break it down into a weekly goal. A weekly goal means that we need to be in front of approximately 250 people a week. If we get in front of 250 people a week, we may bring on one new client, okay? If we break it into a daily goal, that means we need to be in front of about 50 new people every single day. So if it's 30 people on Monday, we need to make sure we're in front of 70 people on Tuesday. If we do those things, then approximately every other week, we should generate a new client. And by the end of the year, we should have somewhere between 25 and 26 clients, which means that we would hit our goal of $50,000 in income. So identifying your goals is important because if you don't have any goals, it makes it very hard to attain anything. It makes it very hard to stay disciplined and very hard to be consistent. All right. So I would highly recommend that if you're starting a business, you sit down, probably take a week or so. And I say a week because you want to come back to these things. You don't want to just look at them all at once, to develop the specific goals that you want to attain in a year. Okay. And you can do this on a 5-year basis, 10-year basis, etc. Moving on to the next piece of it, writing daily and weekly to-dos. So let's say we have our goals in place. We have created a model week. We know that we need to do what we need to do on a daily basis. But for instance, as I mentioned before, maybe we don't hit our goals on Monday. But what is it that we need to do Tuesday? So we write down our weekly to-dos because preparation is ultimately key. And this way, come the following morning, you're prepared. So this sounds very, very simple. And the reality is that it is very simple, but most people don't do it. Most people will end their day, whether it's on a bad note or a good note, with no consistency in writing down their to-do so that when they come in the following morning, they are not organized. So you start jumping in, you start answering emails, then you realize you're going to the coffee machine and you realize you're giving somebody a call back. And before you know it, all of a sudden your day has escaped you and you haven't accomplished the goals that you need to accomplish, or excuse me, a task that you need to accomplish in order to attain your goals. Okay, so a list of to-dos will definitely help you stay focused, help you stay on track towards your goals. And I always say if you spend the right amount of time developing your goals, you should be able to identify your daily tasks to help you achieve them very, very easily. All right. So I'm going to pause just for a second, Randy. I want to know if there's any questions, only because I can't see it on my end right now.
I do not see any questions so far. So just throwing it back out there to everyone. If you do want to ask any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as we go along.
All right, perfect. So I will continue on. So key growth activities. So it seems very simple, but marketing is your number one key growth activity. Then it's acquiring clients, which will come from the marketing, and then it's client service, because you don't want clients going out the back end. So what does this mean? This means one of the things we talked about last time is developing a marketing plan. So you should have done some type of research on your market. What is it that you need to fill in the market? Is there a niche? Is there something that is missing where somebody can come in? A good example is electric vehicles. Everybody knows about Tesla right now. Excuse me, and that was a niche that they were able to fill. They became the first person to do it, and it has created a large following for them. So that was a marketing campaign that worked very well. From there, once you acquire clients, you want to make sure that you are taking care of them. So in Tesla's case, they started to acquire thousands, if not millions, of clients. However, they need to make sure that they're servicing those clients well so that they don't go back to buying gasoline vehicles. So one of the things that Tesla has is they have all the service at their stores. Somewhat similar to other dealerships that you go to, except that not only do they have it at their stores, they also will come out to you, get your car, take it there, do the maintenance on it, and then drive it back to you. They make it very convenient for the customer. So client service is definitely key in any business that you're starting. A lot of people forget about it. So I'd highly recommend that you focus on your marketing plan, that when you're looking into your client, or when you do acquire clients, that you make sure you take care of them and provide them with the best client service or customer service possible. One other example I can give you of amazing customer service is Chick-fil-A. If there's anyone not familiar with Chick-fil-A here, I would only guess that you've been hiding in a box for the last 10 years. But Chick-fil-A probably has the best customer service when it comes to fast food restaurants. And that's what's taken them above McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, etc. So just remember that client service, although it's the last in the three key growth activities, can become very important in building a brand and in building a business. All right, so let's talk about back office activities. This is the least fun part of anyone's business, of growing any business. Sometimes people can get carried away with this part of it. I know I'm guilty of that myself in trying to set up a back office, but it is important. It's important to have some type of, whether it's an accounting system or some way in which you manage your finances, what's going in and what's coming out. What type of income are you generating and what are you spending your money on? And are you making money? A lot of times people don't realize that they are actually losing money, especially if they take out loans to start a business. So it is important to have some type of accounting system in place. You could use Excel, you could use QuickBooks, whatever it might be. As you grow, you'll want to have some type of finance department that can do what we call financial planning and analysis for your projects. How are those projects doing? Are some projects more profitable than others? Or some clients more profitable than others? Okay, so as you grow, these things become more essential. Human resources, if you're growing a business and it becomes a multi-million-dollar business and you have hundreds of employees working for you, I'm hoping one of you, if not multiple, will have businesses of that size. You have a human resources department to take care of things like medical, disability, 401k setup, etc. So back office activities, although they are often forgot about, they are essential. One other thing I'll leave you with is that if you don't set up your accounting properly, it can cost you a lot of money as well, especially when it comes to tax. All right, so if we move on to what I consider probably the more interesting piece of all of this is the business examples. The business examples, I think, are important from the standpoint of it gives you some real life examples of people who have done things in the past and have flourished or are flourishing. So I'm going to start with a sauce and mac and cheese business. It kind of sounds funny, but it just gives you an idea that you can really build a business out of almost anything. This client I acquired back when I originally started, and I actually knew him from when I went to school at the University of Delaware. Long story short, back then he had started creating or developing his own sauce, and later on came mac and cheese. And over these last 6 years, he's done everything from trying to sell his sauce from door to door to going into restaurants and asking if he could provide samples, to being in a restaurant and actually selling his sauce and even offering the mac and cheese as samples. He's at this point, he's got into Whole Foods. He's working on getting into Target. He also has the opportunity to get on Shark Tank. Okay. So it has taken 6 years to get to this point, and in the last year or two, things have really started to take off. The reason I give that as an example is for two reasons. One, he still works at his current job with an employer while doing this on the side. On top of that, it's taken 6 years, so he's definitely been very, very patient with it. From a consistency standpoint, consistency is slightly different in this specific scenario because his consistency has come in the product that he has created, his mac and cheese and his sauce. In other words, his clients would not like his product if it was not consistent. So with some type of consistency, discipline, continuing to work at it and learn and build, he's been able to grow his business with the hope that this year will probably be his best year. And you may even see him on Shark Tank. So if you see somebody with mac and cheese or some type of barbecue sauce, it's likely the person that I'm talking to you about. Another client I brought on probably about 3 years ago, he started an online retail business. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't believe he actually went to college. I believe he started it right out of school. And he's grown it over time. When we first met, he was doing around $1 million in sales. Last year, he probably did about 3 million, and this year, it's likely he'll do more than that. One thing that is important in this specific scenario is that when I first initially met him, the thing that was holding him back was his back office. He had no type of analysis or financial planning and analysis in place to determine how he was spending money. He knew that if he brought in X amount of dollars, that he could pay himself Y, and ultimately he would just take money in and out of the business as he pleased. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that people do make, which we'll talk about in a moment. So, and anyway, long story short, we started working together. I was explaining to him, listen, we need to have a more concrete idea of where you're spending money and how you're spending money. For instance, he actually prints his own T-shirts. So his company is a company that deals in self-care and in feminism, if you will. And he gets designs for T-shirts from people that he hires, and then he actually does all the printing himself. But what he was doing is he would be over ordering shirts or over ordering the ink in order to print the different designs on the shirt. And long story short, he was spending a lot more money than he needed to when the money wasn't necessarily coming in. So as I mentioned before, it's important to have the back office in place. For him, he was doing very well as far as acquiring clients, but not necessarily so well in the back office piece of it. Third example here, Mason contracting business. So this one's very near and dear to me because this is what I grew up in. If you don't know, I'm half white, half black. My grandfather was black, and he is the one who started the Mason contracting business in the 60s, when most black people, most minorities had a lot of oppression, a lot more than we have today, and it was very much more in your face. And I always give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. But he went probably 10 or 15 years before he really started to see any type of growth in his business. There were days and times when people didn't pay him. My grandmother would tell me about times when they barely had enough money to buy your basic necessities just to eat. But he didn't give up. He stuck with it, grew it into a multi-million-dollar business. And the reason I say that is because patience is key. And I will tell anybody today that the things that he went through were probably much harder than anything you'll need to go through today. So if entrepreneurship, if starting a business is what you want to do, the most important thing you can do if you can develop consistency and discipline is just simply be patient. It just takes time. I have here a financial advisor. That's just simply myself. It's a lot of hard work to build a business. I typically work from 7:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. And it takes that amount of time putting in just to grow the business itself. I actually, when I came out of school, I started out at an accounting firm, a large accounting firm. I started out, my salary was $53,500. They paid me a sign-on bonus of $3,000. I got another $5,000 bonus for passing my CPA. And in my first year, I made $61,500. I tell you that for two reasons. One, it was a lot of money as essentially a kid coming out of college. Two, when I decided to become a financial advisor, I took a huge step back. When I first started, I was getting paid $10 an hour. After that, my salary is about $30,000 a year, and then from there, I had to build it all out. At this point, I'm 6 years into the business, and I would say in the last two, things have really started to pick up and go well. But most people give up when it comes to starting their own business within the first 3 months, actually. And if you stick with it, and if it's something that you like and you enjoy, if you can get past that 3-month period, it is very likely that you will succeed. It's just a matter of time and patience. Last example here is an event planning business. This is a lady that I actually met through the first company that I started working for, the large accounting firm. She decided that she wanted to start an event planning business. So one, as you know, it has not been going very well right now due to the pandemic and COVID. And so she's had to improvise. She's had to actually go back and work for an old company that she was at before. She's had to take on other work to support herself. Although she is still planning events, it's not the same amount that she had in the past. One thing that is very interesting about the event planning business is that she does a lot of it virtually as it is. So a lot of times she's been traveling around the world and been able to see different sites while still planning events, whether they're in 4 different places in California or Washington, D.C. or in Texas. But the reason I bring her example up is because although she has been patient and disciplined and consistent, there are always going to be roadblocks and obstacles. Now she's about three years into her business. So she's getting to the point where things should start taking off. And I would bet that if I come back and we talk about this again in a year or two, that she will be doing extremely well, especially as things start to come back from this COVID pandemic. So all 5 of these are examples to give you an idea that with patience, consistency, discipline, and a lot of effort, you can definitely build a business. It just takes time. So I want to kind of end here with common mistakes, because these are the things that I think create the most or the biggest hurdles for people. So I bring this up because if you are or do want to start a business, and if you don't have any backing from your family or things of that nature, sometimes it can be very good to actually work for somebody else first, build up a nest egg of dollars that can support you while you do start your business, especially if you want to go into it full time. So for instance, it always makes sense to have an emergency fund or a cash reserve. So if you know your expenses are $2,000 a month, then you probably want to have somewhere between $18,000 to $24,000 in your bank account to support you for the time while you build your business. That's essentially saying you make no money out of your business for the first year. Now, I would say probably everybody on this call is definitely good enough to make some type of money out of their business in the first year, but you do want to provide yourself a cushion. So number one, don't take money out of the business. It needs to be reinvested to help it grow. Even if you do, you want to take a minimal amount out. Okay. A common mistake is the improper business structure for taxes. I highly recommend that you speak to an accountant before setting up your business. Make sure that it is structured properly so that when it comes time to file your taxes, you're not getting hit with all kinds of different penalties. All right. The other big thing is not spending money where it is needed. So what I see a lot of times is that people are spending money to take on campaigns or things that they think are going to do well because they see other people doing it. And a lot of times that may not work for your business. What you want to do is find things that are working for you and pile more money back into it. All right. So same thing from the top, not taking money out. You want to pile money into the things that are working, that are going to help you scale. Amazon is a perfect example, although Amazon is huge now. When it started in the early to mid 90s, all they did was pile money back into the business. That's what allowed it to grow. Jeff Bezos at that time was not the richest man in the world. Luckily, he did have a family who had money, but what he did is he piled all the money back in so that they could continue to grow and continue to expand. And that's important when you start a business. Excuse me. Last, excuse me. Last big mistake is taking a short-term approach. So the best thing you can do is take a long-term approach to your, to your business. And I would say Amazon is a good example of that. They always took a long-term approach to their business, to building the business. It was not about taking money out of the business, but only putting money into it. It was what was best for the client, because what was best for their client or for their customer was excellent service. It was getting a package to them in a day, or figuring out ways to make sure that if they wanted to return a product, they could do it efficiently and effectively. And so taking that long-term, goal-oriented approach where you're focused on your customer is ultimately going to provide you with more benefit down in the long term, whether that's seeing your business grow, whether it's making money, whatever it might be. Okay, so these are common mistakes that most people make in starting a business, and I think it's important to make you aware. So just to conclude here, as we've talked about over and over again, patience, consistency, and discipline will lead to success. It's not going to come quickly at all. The hardest part is definitely the first 3 months. And the reason that is because you're dealing with a lot of rejection. Most people don't deal with a lot of rejection in their life. And when it comes to any type of entrepreneurial endeavor that you're taking on, it's going to deal with a lot of rejection because you are essentially a salesperson at that point. Okay, even though you're helping people, most likely providing a service that is going to be beneficial to them, you are trying to explain to them why that service is going to be beneficial. And unfortunately, probably 9 out of 10 people are going to tell you no. Okay, so getting past that first 3 months, getting used to the rejection is important. Most importantly, if you enjoy what you are doing, what you're helping clients with, then time and effort is really all you need. So to conclude there, entrepreneurship, I think, is amazing. I was actually talking to another client last night. They actually basically started a business that is a mark out business. So most people probably wouldn't even know what this is unless they realize that mark outs are basically those things you see on the street, all the different colors, blue, yellow, the little flags that are put in the ground. And they started this about 2 years ago. And they're doing, or 3 years ago, and they're doing amazing at it. But what they found out is that the amount of freedom that you start to feel and the amount of ability to realize that the world becomes your oyster as an entrepreneur is what they have said has been the greatest part about starting a business. So I would definitely encourage you, if you have thoughts about starting a business, definitely to go and take on the endeavor. If you have questions, be more than happy to answer them either now or later if you do decide to start a business. But I think it is a amazing thing if you take it upon yourself to start your own business and grow it. So I will end with that, and I will ask and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mike. That was a really comprehensive and great presentation. So we don't currently have any, from what I can see in the chat, we don't currently have any questions. So I'm gonna invite if anyone wants to like unmute and ask a question. Otherwise, I can always ask a few follow-up questions that I think might be helpful, but I want to throw it out to the participants first to see if anyone has any questions about any of the content that you discussed, or just in general about getting started in entrepreneurship.
I have a question.
Yes.
What would you say is like the best marketing strategy for like when you have an online business, like promoting it wise, or even just like he said, trying to gain more clientele? And because I have my LLC, I just got it last December 23rd, and the first three ones, like you said, it's true. Like it is hard. So I just wanted to know if you had any like specific tips for online businesses, like e-commerce.
Yep. So one, congratulations on starting your own business.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for the question. I would say this, when it comes to, is it a retail business you said? Or is it just an online business in general?
Yeah, to e-commerce. So like I sell like lashes and cosmetic glitters and stuff like that.
Okay. So there's a couple ways you can go about that, and you could honestly use, multiple different routes here. Number one is growing your social media presence. Okay, so if you can grow your Instagram, grow TikTok, grow YouTube presence, all of those are going to help to get you more recognized. The more content that you can post on those different social media platforms, the higher the opportunity becomes for you to become recognized. Then, as your market starts to grow, or you could even do this now if you're not already doing it, I highly recommend that you set up some type of Shopify e-commerce platform if you're not using a platform like that. But the most important thing is definitely going to be growing your social media outreach if you haven't done that. So weirdly enough, my sister used to do Instagram modeling. So she had started, and I remember it specifically, she had started probably like 800 followers. And over the course of 5 years, she grew it into about 250,000 followers. But she started that by posting all the time. She had actually started a blog, so a blog could be good too. And over time, as she posted more, she started to drive traffic to her Instagram that drove more people to join. And ultimately, she started getting, labels and whatnot to reach out to her in order to, for her to wear their clothes or whatever it might be in order to sell it. So I would say that your social media is going to be important. If you're looking for, call it inspiration, or a person who is very good at growing social media presence just to learn from, I'd recommend Gary V or Gary Vaynerchuk if you haven't heard of him already. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And
Any other? Oh, go ahead.
oh, I forgot what I was gonna say that fast. Because I was watching a YouTube video just like 2 days ago about like marketing and different ways, like strategies and stuff. And a lot of people in the videos kept mentioning customers' journey or customers, I don't know, something along. What does that even mean? Like, I understand customer's journey, but they were like, from the moment they find you to the moment they buy your product, like it has like, what do they mean, like the strategy wise? Like, what does that exactly?
So what I'm gonna tell you is slightly different than what you're thinking, but the idea and process behind it hopefully will provide some clarification. So I'm gonna use Chick-fil-A again as an example. So think about your customer journey when you roll up to Chick-fil-A. Okay, you pull into the drive-through. All right, you have somebody standing outside in, whether it's sunny, rainy, snowing, sleeting, hailing. They're standing outside and they greet you and they say, "Hi, how are you doing? Can I take your order?" All right, and they want to know what your name is. Okay? So that's already starting that customer journey. There's no other fast food restaurant that asked for your name prior to Chick-fil-A. So now they get your name, you pull around, you actually pay prior to getting up to the window. At least the most recent time I went to Chick-fil-A, you pay prior to getting up to the window to help speed along the process. You now get up to the window and they say, "Hi, you're Mike, right? And this is what you ordered." Okay, perfect. They hand you your order. They tell you to have a great day, and they look forward to seeing you come back. That is your customer journey. So what you want to figure out, Letitia, is how do you create that in an e-commerce business? Okay. Somebody reaches out to you, you respond to them with a nice response, whatever it might be. Maybe they're asking about your product. You tell them a little more about it. All right. They decide that they want to buy your product. They buy your product. You get it shipped out to them efficiently and effectively so that it's there. If you tell them it's going to be 3 days, it's there in 3 days, or it's there in 2. Maybe you put a little letter in the box that you ship to them, telling them how appreciative you are that they purchased your product. and that if they have any questions, they can feel free to call, yourself or your customer support line, or send you an email. You can also say that if they are extremely satisfied, that they give you some type of recommendation, or for instance, like Amazon has different star ratings. Those things will help to not only promote your brand and your business, but also provide a great customer journey or customer experience. So that's essentially what they're saying when they say customer journey, is what is your customer experience from beginning to end.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I literally do all the things you just said. Like I have a Wix website, so
Okay.
like I designed it myself, and I have the thank you cards and all that I put in. Like I have all of that. So,
Mhm.
but it's just, I don't know if it's Corona or if I don't know if I'm not doing something right. But it's kind of getting frustrating a little bit. So
Well, so the other thing too, right, is that it takes time. Sorry, there's somebody leaving the office. It takes time is number one. Number two is there's also, if you're using social media platforms or using like platforms like, let's say, Etsy or Facebook, they have what we call SEO, or search engine optimization. So at first, a lot of that is going to be very difficult because you're trying to drive traffic somewhere that is probably pretty heavily inundated with other people. So you have to figure out, one, how to separate yourself from them, and then two, how do you make sure that you are changing the tags that you have on your products relatively, relatively timely. All right. So an example could be, if we're coming up to Mother's Day, right? You might want to put in your description, Mother's Day eyelashes or whatever it might be, something to make somebody have to, or to see your product. So that's another big key to it as well.
okay, thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Any other questions?
Yeah, other questions. That was great. Thank you, Letitia, for sharing that. So while people are thinking, I guess one question that came to mind for me while you were kind of discussing this is, you might have kind of said this in different ways, but how do you know when the right time is to kind of make a decision to do entrepreneurship? I think a lot of people, and this is just in general, I think in big milestones in life, so maybe like getting married, having kids, doing these kind of big jumps, a lot of people are like, I have to wait for the right time. And so is there some sort of formula that you can recommend to kind of know, like, this is the time to do it?
Yep. So excellent question. And unfortunately, there is no right time. You can prepare for it. And, weirdly enough, like I said, I was having a conversation with my clients last night who also have started their own business. The husband is already working full time. The wife is actually still working at her job while running the business's books and all that good stuff. And they're trying to figure out, when do they leave. So what I had recommended to them is that they make sure that you have some type of cash reserve, as I was talking about earlier. Make sure you have a cushion there for yourself. There is never a right time. And it's unfortunate that there's no clear answer to it. But I always tell everyone that at some point you need to make a decision to just jump. And I actually got that from Steve Harvey. If anyone's familiar with Steve Harvey, he's a comedian. He hosts different TV shows. But what he says is that in order to get to entrepreneurship, or to do the things that you want, you have to jump. And you're gonna tumble, you're gonna fall, you're gonna hit roadblocks. It's unfortunate, but that's part of becoming an entrepreneur. So again, there is no right answer when to do it. I think having a cushion there, as far as cash is concerned, provides some level of protection. And then from there, it's just a matter of jumping into it.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to think. I felt like I had another question. Does anyone else have any questions? While I'm trying to remember what it was.
I guess one thing just to add to that also is that Oh shoot, now I'm forgetting. Now I'm forgetting my thought. um, oh, what was it? Oh, is that once you do make the jump, you have to go full into it. You can't be half in and half out. You truly do. If you do make the jump to start a business, you definitely need to go full time into it. Otherwise, it is very hard to do it either on the side or trying to do one project and 5 other projects.
One thing I wanted to add too, not that I'm an expert, but from my experience so far, I would definitely say do your research because OMG, like I wish somebody would have just, I don't know, but it's just so many things that YouTube doesn't tell you, Google doesn't tell you, and people don't tell you. And when I first got my LLC, there were so many things that I didn't know that I had to do that I was like, what even is this? What is quarterly tax? What is yearly tax? What is even, I had to do business registration. I'm like, I thought I did my formation. Isn't that the same? It's so confusing. So I definitely would say do your research thoroughly. Like, make sure you do your research before you even jump into anything, like fully, like full on in. So
I would agree 100% with that. I would second that comment. You should do research, and then the other thing too is don't be afraid to make mistakes. As an entrepreneur, your job is to make mistakes because if you're not failing, you're not growing, and if you're not growing, then you're not becoming a business. Um, so while it is difficult because a lot of times you're the only one taking on those responsibilities, taking on all those risks, taking on the failures, they are going to help you grow in the long run. So I know it's hard, Letitia, especially when you're starting out, but I'm glad to hear that you pushed through it all and you're continuing on. So that is important.
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not an entrepreneur, but one thing I did really appreciate that you mentioned, Mike, that I think is just important in general is that kind of setting that schedule for yourself. I think one thing, like you said, that is really attractive about entrepreneurship to people is that you set your own schedule and you're not working for another person who's kind of dictating what your job looks like. But with that becomes that extra responsibility of time management and kind of putting in the right hours. And when do you do that? The easy thing about a job is that they tell you what those hours are typically. So you're expected to be in at this time. And, some jobs that have some longer range hours than others. But like just like online learning is kind of we've all saw with the virtual environment, like a lot of that has put a lot of onus back on us to like make sure we're on our own schedules and getting work done. So now's the time to kind of practice those behaviors. So if this is something you're thinking about in the future, you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, then if you're like, man, I kind of struggle with time management right now, I kind of struggle with like keeping on a schedule or doing those to-do lists or things like that, this is the time to practice. So practice kind of every day writing down 5 things you need to get done, or just setting a schedule for yourself. That's going to really help you set up for the future.
Yep, 100%. And you have me thinking about a person that I would say at least sports fans are going to be familiar with. So Mark Cuban, he's a guy who started his own business in college. He used to, I'm not telling you to go do this, but he used to host parties at his house. He actually went and got a bigger house so that he could host the parties. And that was one of the ways that he helped to put himself through school. So there are all kinds of ways that you can not only, make money while you're in school and help to supplement, paying for your college tuition or doing the things that you want to do. And I will say in college, you will never have more free time than you do now. So take advantage of it. Try and come up with all the ideas you can think of, throw them at the wall, see if they work. If they don't work, take a step back, try something new. There's no harm in failing. The only thing is not trying again. That's the biggest failure you can make. So, again, I think as long as you keep trying, you'll be on the right path.
Yeah, and also finding if you know someone who could be like a mentor to you to kind of help you if they've started their own business, or we have a lot of if you're a business major or even if you're not, we have a lot of really great faculty at our campus who maybe help you with that kind of like the business model, or how do you figure out some of those back end things that come up that you never even thought about. So I think the mentorship piece will probably be very helpful as well. So finding someone that maybe has been through that process so that you can feel supported when those questions come up and you're not sure how to address them.
Absolutely. And as I've said before too, if anyone has questions, you can always feel free to reach out. If you don't have my contact information, just feel free to reach out to Randy, Daron, any one of the staff there, and they'll be able to put you in contact with me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any other questions before we kind of close out for the day?
Can be on anything. The only thing is, don't ask me about GameStop. That's the only thing you can't ask me about.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. All right. Well, we'll end the workshop. I want to thank Mike for taking the time tonight to do this workshop for us. This was very informative, very helpful. It is recorded, so I will, we'll kind of clean it up a little bit, and we'll post it both to like our EOF and Trio pages. So if you want to rewatch, or, if somebody missed it who wanted to see it, make sure you share it with them. But thank you so much, Mike. We'll hang out for a minute in case someone has like a question that they might want to ask more one-on-one. But otherwise, I hope you have a great night, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Good night, everyone.